All right, round 7 recap. It's going to be a short one today. We're going to look over the one game that was not chess. This was alien chess. And yeah, I don't even know what chess is anymore. The engines these people use for prep is out of this world. They played this game at about 98% accuracy. The game makes no sense. The chess.com engine looks like a person who's running and his heartbeat is just hyper accelerated and then goes up and down, and then you look at the review and it's like 98%. What? Doesn't even make sense. But Hikaru did surprise Nepo. These are two of the fastest super GMs there are nowadays. They're big intuition guys, big calculators, and Nepo ran the risk of falling into big time pressure today, remembering his alien prep. I'm telling you, they really need to shuffle these pieces around. This is just not fair. I don't even know what they use. But we get a mainline Petrov, not for long. These moves do not need to be explained. There are thousands of games in the database that could explain them. And we get Queen D7, guarding the B7 pawn. Maybe if H3, there could be sacrifices if you're not playing against a super GM. A lot of bishops facing over towards the king side. So we get C5, a positional overextension. But the point of this move is that you're locking up the center, and if the bishop goes to C7, well, the bishop does go to C7. Of course, you cannot take this because bishop takes H2 check, as always one of those generic chess.com puzzles. But after bishop to C7, Hikaru plays a really rare move, pawn to G3. They're both familiar with this move, but in essence what this does is 1, it controls F4, 2, it shuts the bishop's diagonal down, 2, H2, so there's no bishop takes H2 discovery check. And 3, sometimes the bishop can go to F1 and manually fianchetto. Right, G3, you have light squared weaknesses, light squared holes on F3 and H3. The bishop slides back, it patches those weaknesses. So good stuff. A5, a way to play. Knight B, D2, exploiting the pin. There was also like 3 brilliancies this game. So, and like 15 great moves. So, you know, good stuff. Queen takes B7, he goes for it. Semi-greedy, but a sideline and one that Nakamura knew better. Point is, of course, there's no discovered attack on the queen, so pawn's a pawn. In this position, we get knight takes F2 and let the games begin. So the point of knight takes F2 is that if you take the rook right now, you will lose because the knight will take the bishop. There is a material imbalance, but your queen is so far removed from the game and the rook is being attacked. So for example, after you move the rook, bishop to H3, all of the pieces get in and none of white's pieces could move. None of white's pieces could develop. And again, the light squared weaknesses you cannot patch anymore because you lost the piece that controls the light squares. That is the bishop. So knight takes F2, let the games begin. Bishop takes H7. Both of these moves were brilliancies. And the point is now there's no knight takes D3. And after the king takes, now you could get away with taking the rook. And the difference is rook could rook lift up to E3. There's not much counterplay here. Also, the king is misplaced here on H7. So queen takes, and we get knight H3, bailing out, saving the knight, gaining a tempo on the king. So pretty normal stuff so far, kind of. Bishop G4, we get queen B7, trying to make a run for it, trying to escape, get back into the game. Last thing you want is to pick up a rook and then have your queen trapped on A8. Because then, are you really up a rook if you're not using your queen? Or are you kind of down in exchange a queen for a rook then? Just something to think about. Use your pieces. Rook E8 offering the trade and queen B3. You're going to see the engine analysis go up and down. These are all the best moves. Hikaru had this all figured out. Jan, on the other hand, he spent 20 minutes, but that's more so to recollect his thoughts on the prep. We get knight takes E1. As you can see, black is going to need to be super active on the king side to make up for the material deficit. A rook and a pawn for a bishop. 6 for 3. Quick math. Queen E6, we get queen D3 check. Gaining a tempo, getting his queen closer to the king, so it provides more defense. Now we get bishop to F5. Queen to F1. Hikaru still in his prep. Jan has spent 45 minutes. Basically, he's playing hyper defense, and the second this bishop and the rook get into the game, that's GG's. So black needs to be hyper active. We get knight D7, knight F3, a nice rotation, rotating to G1 to get the other knight to F3. In a perfect world, this will all work. We get king g8. It looks like a weird move, but the point is you do not want knight g5 coming with check. That could be a fork sometimes. It could force a trade sometimes. Black doesn't want to force trades. White wants to force trades because he's up material. But the simpler this position becomes, the closer white is to winning. That's how material advantages work. So white wants to simplify. And using that knowledge, Hikaru went queen e2, though this blundered his winning chances. What he should have done, ignore the engine, because it's not correct. Knight is knight to f3. He should have left pieces on the board, rotated everything over, and then went to play a4 to get his rook on a3. This is the easiest route out for the rook. And they say rooks on the second give defense, but all your pieces are giving defense. So rooks on the third provide offense. You need some offense, right, to win in chess. So he needs to get his bishop and rook out at all costs. Instead, he goes queen e2. Now knight e4 patches that hole, and there's a lot of complications, a lot of tension in the center of the board. Now we get a4, and guess what Nepo found in this position? We get brilliancy number 3. If this rook and bishop come out, Nakamura wins. So, of course, we get bishop takes g3, right? Obvious move. Why wouldn't you play bishop takes g3 and just give up all your pieces? So the point of this move is that after pawn takes, which is pretty much forced, you get knight to f4. And if you don't take this knight, you lose your queen. So don't lose your queen. You also get mated, actually, right? This would be disgusting. So that is forced to take, and now we get queen g6 check. This king can only go to one square. Cannot go to h2, because if it goes to h2, the queen comes down to g3, and the king gets trapped on h1. Knight f2, white needs to give up the queen. Yes, you have a lot of material for it, but look at this. This knight cannot get into the game, so that is checkmate. If this knight cannot get into the game, that means this bishop cannot get into the game. We can't even get the move knight f3, because then you're pins, bishop to e4. So this bishop and this knight are not real pieces. I'm sorry, but they're not. Could get rook a3, getting the rook into the game, but again, none of the pieces could get into the game, and mate is very close. It's going to ensue. Just none of the pieces could move. It's crazy. Computer prep all the way. So we get king to f1, saving the king at least at the expense of losing the queen. And white has a lot of pieces. He has 2 knights and a rook for a queen. Usually that is winning, but we know chess is very position specific. So we get bishop to g4, clearing a way to attack the king, not allowing the pieces to get out. We get rook a3 and now a simplification. Very rarely could a queen match up with a rook, a bishop, and a knight. This is an exception position. Aiming at d4, aiming at the bishop. You got to protect both. So knight moves to b3, protecting d4 and c1, and the pawn on f4 is protected. Everything is protected, it's just nothing is coordinated. And since nothing is coordinated, there's an unlimited amount of checks. So in this position, everything's a great move, because if Nepo doesn't do this, he loses the game. A draw is forced. So Nepo lost an hour and 12 minutes on his clock. Hikaru lost 45, but really it was just because he blundered queen e2, and he spent most of his time on that. He blundered right when he got out of his prep. But I mean, the position made no sense. Like, even the engine doesn't know. It was literally a game of alien chess. Like if predecessors or famous people from the famous greats from the past saw this, they would think 2 beginners are playing chess, and then they would be like, whoa, this is kind of genius. But then they wouldn't understand it, because no one understands it. I don't even know if they understand it, but yeah, they need to shuffle the pieces around. I know we only looked at a draw today. I apologize. Tomorrow I will have time to recap all the games. Hope to see you there. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.